Hey, this is John at Power Curve Cycles. Today we're going to go over unboxing and building your Talaria Sting R MX4 bike. Okay, for this job, we're going to need a box cutter, some wire snips, a 5mm Allen wrench, a 5mm attachment to our torque wrench. The torque wrench needs to be able to go up to 35 Newton meters. We're going to need 15mm socket or open wrench and a 19mm socket or open wrench. Some nice waterproof grease, and a shop towel. So in your parts box, you're going to have some gear oil for your first gear oil change. They give you a couple different number plates in here. We've got our foot pegs. We've got these battery blocks that are going to help the battery from rattling around too much. A bunch of zip ties, which will be nice for the front number plates. We've got our stem cap and keys and some extra bolts in there. This is our tool kit. It's nice that Talaria provides. It's got all your tools there for your build. And then we've got our wheel spacers. So make sure that you get these bolts that are dangling loose down here. They're always going to be loose in the box, but these are the bolts that are going to go into your axle pinch bolts down here. Now we're going to take care of this front wheel here. So first thing we'll do is we're going to back just one side of this axle out here, and then take your hand and push it because we're going to pull the axle out. So keep working it that way. I'm going to clean up this axle. They typically come with not enough grease on there, and so we'll clean it up and give it a fresh coating of grease. Here are those bolts that we found at the bottom of the packaging. So those are going to be your axle pinch bolts. We'll get those started here. These will be pretty important for the front wheel setup. Okay, and then I'm just going to use the 5mm here to just loosely get them seated and ready for the axle to be installed. Like I said, on that axle, it comes with just a little bit of grease on there, and we want to make sure that it's got a nice coating all over it. So we'll use nice waterproof grease on there. Dip our finger. And you don't need too much. We just want a nice even coating around the axle. Make sure and get it all the way up to where, on both ends, where the fork lugs are going to be. Okay, that's a good amount there. So, with one hand we'll bring the wheel over. We're going to get that rotor right into the caliper, checking our wheel spacers. Make sure that they're staying in place while we work the wheel on. Take the axle, work it through the lugs on both sides like that. Okay, and then we'll take the axle cap on this side and just snug it up. So this is where it can get interesting. What we don't want is we don't want to snug up this axle and have the suspension bind in like that. That's going to hang up the suspension and not allow it to work well enough. But also you'll notice, due to machining tolerances, if you wiggle the wheel here, you might feel some wobble. Since these lugs push up against the axle spacers, if you don't have it nice and tight there, you're going to get some wheel wobble. So we kind of walk the line between having a good centered wheel there and having good suspension flow. So what I like to do is just gently snug up the bolts on the axle here. Just enough to take that wobble out. And that feels pretty good. Now we're going to come in and starting on one side here, we're going to tighten the axle pinch bolts. So these are going to be tightened to between 8 and 10 Newton meters. So using our torque wrench here, get a nice click. Go to the next one. Make sure you're holding your torque wrench at the very end of the wrench to get the proper torque. Feel that brake, come back, hit this one again, and then back to the second one. Good there. Come over to this side and tighten up this guy. There we go. Get the second pinch bolt. Got it. Come back, double check the first one. And back again here. Okay, and now for the axle bolt, we're just looking for about 15 Newton meters on this guy. So we'll get that set up, which is going to be right there and right there. So front wheel is looking good. Let's get these handlebars put on now. So we're going to spin them around, double check our routing for our cables there, and then hold them with one hand, get the face plate up there, and start loading in the pinch bolts here. So we're going to set the handlebar position as best we can at this point until we can throw a leg over the bike and fine-tune the rider compartment with our brake levers and with the handlebar position here. So for right now, we're going to just set these bolts here, but I do want to set them and torque them in case we forget down the road that we haven't tightened these properly. So let's always make sure when you're dealing with the handlebar to get them torqued properly and then do your adjusting later on. So I want to tighten these guys in a crisscross pattern and then check on the sides to make sure that we have the clamp face tightened evenly here. So I actually need to loosen the lower portion. And I'm looking at the gap on the faceplate on the top clamp bolts compared to the bottom clamp bolts right now. So still need to even them out a little bit. So I'll loosen the bottom, tighten the top, and the spacing there looks pretty good. Now I'm going to use the reference lines on the handlebars here and center them. Kind of take a step back and see if they need to be rolled, which they definitely do for now. Check the centering again. Probably right about there will be a good spot. So we'll snug these down a little bit here. Again, doing that crisscross pattern. So nice and snug. Looking good as far as left to right alignment there. I like the roll on them. And we got good gaps on the faceplate there. So torque on these guys is 10 Newton meters. So we'll go ahead and use our torque wrench here. Torque these guys down. Again, crisscross pattern when we're tightening here. And all set. Okay, next we're going to connect these wires down here. One is a front brake sensor. You'll notice it's color coordinated, so red to red. And then you have your throttle sensor here. The bike has four power cutoffs. So one would be on the front brake, the rear brake, then you have a tip sensor, and then you also have one on the kickstand. But when we put these together, again, you're going to look for color coordinated sides here. And look on the top here, you'll see an arrow, which is going to line up with an arrow here. And what that's doing is there's an alignment block that's the same color as this outer part here that you want to make sure is lined up with the cable, the other end of the cable. So there's some really fine pins in there that need to line up properly. And so look to make sure that you have your arrow, again, lined up with your arrow on the other side, which is right there. Be real gentle when you push these together, and you'll see them lock in like that. Same thing with the throttle cable. We're looking for the arrow on the top, right there, with the arrow on the top of this one. Gently slide them together until they press nice and firm. So when you're putting your foot pegs in, you've got a right and a left, but it's not always obvious which one's going to be on the right side, because they will both fit into the bracket and mount in there. This is incorrect because the peg is going to move forward on the bike. So that's not going to work. So this is the foot peg that we need. You'll notice again the pin that's there, and you've got different holes in the foot peg. So I'm going to put it in the aft position. You've got a fore and an aft. We'll put it here in the aft position. Get that pin lined up so it's in there, and you'll see that this pivots backwards. So if you're hitting something as you go by it on the bike, it's going to pivot back that way. You've got your nut here. We'll come in from the back side and finger tighten that on. And we'll get a wrench on there, and we're going to tighten these guys down to 35 Newton meters. Then we're going to open up the breather tube for the gearbox. Okay, it's battery time. So we'll take our keys here on the side and open up the compartment. Grab the battery here. We'll just move that cable out of the way. Slide it in. Make our connection, push it down until you hear that click. And then we have our circuit breaker here. We're going to push that over to the right side. Hopefully it's been on the left side. Now your bike also comes with these blocks here, and that's going to help once installed to keep the battery from bouncing around. So this one we're going to set right on top of that warning symbol there. And then that's going to be for the lid. So when we close the lid, it's going to hold it nice and snug there. Open that up, you'll see it stuck there. And then you get a second one here, and this guy is going to go on the battery itself. Once I get that off. So where this silver plate is here, we're just going to lift the battery up a little bit, set it down right in front of that plate so it sticks onto the battery, put the battery back down, and that's going to hold it fore and aft. So now your battery's all set. We're ready to go. So that's it for unboxing and building up your Talaria Sting R MX4 bike. Check back for part 2 of this video series where we're going to go into some things that you really should do before you take your bike out for a ride. Things like bedding in your brakes. There's some bearings on these bikes that could use a lot more grease, and some other tips and tricks for getting this bike set up for your first ride. Check out powercurvecycles.com for any questions you have. We have plenty of upgrades, tools, tips, and tricks for you on our site. We'll see you for the next round.